So from the very beginning, one of the things that interested me most was, why do we not know this stuff? If it's true, as I'm saying in this book, that India changed the whole face of Asia with its, not just its religious ideas, but its philosophy, its learning, its ideas of cosmology, astronomy, mathematics, dance, sculpture, this whole package of Indian stuff which spreads. If it's true that this is as important as it seems to be, how come we don't know all this? How come that this is not something that we're taught at school? How come it's not something we all know, like we know about Alexander the Great or the British Empire or all the other things that we are brought up with? And there are a number of answers to that, I think. The first is colonialism. We are inheritors of an educational system that has come out of a world where, as Macaulay famously put it, a single shelf of a good English library contains more of worth than the entire native literature of India and Arabia. Now, we laugh at that now, but that
was what my head of department told me when I asked why there wasn't more Indian literature on the course. He was like, well, is there any?
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, there is a great deal, and it's extraordinary. And half the world was suckled on it. Literally, half the world's population today lives in countries where Indian ideas are now or once were dominant. So the easy answer is colonialism, because the British didn't recognise it. But it's actually only half the answer. There are other reasons why we don't know this. And I think partly it's because it's been split into different stories. That the story of Buddhism is connected with this idea of the Silk Road. The spread of Hinduism into Southeast Asia is part of the story of the spread of Sanskrit. The story of Indian mathematics, as far as it's taught at all, and the fact that the zero and the numbers we use every day are Indian, is taught in history of science or something. And these things are all curated in different departments, split up. And particularly at the centre of it, there is this idea which my generation got very excited by, and it was a new idea, amazingly, because it's now become so mainstream, is this idea of the Silk Road. This summer in London, there is a major exhibition, which I'll be seeing this afternoon at the British Library, and another major exhibition at the British Museum about the Silk Road, which is focused on China. And there are these maps you see where there's this more or less horizontal road leading from Chang'an or Xi'an, the terminus of the Silk Road on the South China Sea, on the far east of China, right through what's now Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, and it lands at Antioch or somewhere on the Mediterranean. And actually, that idea of the Silk Road, which is so dominant now, is not an ancient idea. Marco Polo doesn't talk about it. The Chinese don't talk about it. There is no mention of it before 1880, when a German colonial geographer called Baron von Richthofen, the grandfather of the First World War flying ace, the Red Baron, came up with this idea, the Seidenstraßen, which he put into a map of a potential colonial railway that he was planning to build from Berlin to what was then Peking. And it doesn't appear in English until 1936, when a Nazi sympathizer called Sven Hedin writes a book called The Silk Road, which comes into English. And by the 1980s, when I was a kid at university, it was beginning to be propagated. And my first book was about following Marco Polo down the Silk Road. But the Silk Road, in my opinion, does not really have any reality on the ground until the Mongols smash an enormous hole through the middle of Asia in the 13th century. Before that, and particularly in the classical period, the great age of Rome of Augustus, the aftermath of Antony Cleopatra committing suicide, is that Egypt is appropriated by Rome, colonized, which gives Egypt and Roman Empire a sea border with India. Because of the monsoon winds, it only takes 2 months to sail with a sailing boat between a port on the Red Sea and a port in Kerala or a port in Gujarat or on the Indus.
I mean, this is one of the things which you write about, which is all of these luxuries which were entering into the Roman world, whether it's pepper or silks or rhubarb, which, by the way, completely fucking spun me out because
Rhubarb and cream couldn't be more English.
there is nothing more English than rhubarb and custard. And like, my husband's from Yorkshire, and this morning I was like, "Did you know that rhubarb is from India?" And he was like, "You can't have everything."
It sounds like you've been in a kind of Sanjeev Bhaskar sketch. Or something.
I'm sick of you saying that everything is Indian.
Leonardo da Vinci, Indian.
Yeah, Indian. I mean, that was my grandmother. She like Henry VIII, Indian.
We had Sanjeev at the launch.
Oh, really?
And I had him do and he did a very funny. I do a podcast called the Empire Podcast. And he said it is an Indian podcast called the Umpire Podcast. And then he did his own sort of bespoke sketch for.
But you've got all these Roman writers who link silk and the fact that it's so sensuous and you can see so much of a woman's body through it to this idea of, well, we're decadent and we're weak and look at us, we're kind of on the edge of depravity.
The specific idea that the Roman writer you're talking about is complaining about, this is Pliny. And Pliny is a very sort of familiar figure. He's that peppery colonel or the kind of, the kind of angry admiral propping up a bar at some pub by the sea.
We've gone soft.
Yeah, and he says, why do you need all this black stuff on your food? What is this pepper that people now, the young now put on their food? And as you said, why would we pay a fortune to bring a see-through material so that these decadent Roman matrons can show off their bodies in parties? Gemstones, we don't need them. And so his argument is that the entire wealth of the Roman world, as he says, India is a drain for all the precious metals of the world, which is a very nice sort of reverse of obviously the 18th and 19th century thing when the West drains the wealth of India into British pockets, into all those national trust houses that now have Indian treasures inside them, like Powis Castle. Mm. But in the first century, Pliny's complaining because he says, we make all this money, we do all this work, we conquer all these countries like Gaul, and then our rich, decadent aristocracy just buy a load of nonsense from India, that pepper, cotton, silks, gemstones, something called nard, which was the basis for Roman perfume, which comes from the Himalayas. I don't know whether you know your Christian Gospels, but in the Gospel of Matthew, there's a scene where Martha massages Christ's feet with nard. And all the other disciples complain, saying that we could have just sold this and given it to the money to the poor. And you're wasting it on him. and this is a measure of how expensive this stuff is. And recently, a papyrus has turned up, which has excited all the economic historians because it contains a detailed invoice for one consignment of goods. It's a very modern document. It's exactly what you take out if you were shipping carpets from India to Bradford today or something. And it has, in a sense, one column saying what's inside the container, another saying its value, and a third column saying the customs take that's going to have to be paid at the border for each one of these things. So it's ivory, nard, pepper, cotton, and silk. And if this one random consignment on one ship called the Hemaplon, we know the name of the ship even, if the Hemaplon had made it to Egypt and they got this crate to the Nile, shipped it up to Alexandria and sold it in Alexandria, the ship owner or whoever was behind this consignment would have been rich enough to buy one of the premier estates in Egypt or indeed central Tuscany and have enough money to join the Roman Senate. So it was clearly a highly risky enterprise to go over the seas. There's pirates, there's shipwrecks, there's all manner of things that can go very badly wrong. You have to borrow money to buy this stuff in the first place. But if you get it back to Rome or to Alexandria, you are in, you're the Elon Musk of Alexandria. You're and if you do it twice, then you can buy up half of Rome.